Success should only be measured by one thing. How it makes you feel. The all-new Infiniti Q60. Infiniti. Empower the drive.
Good evening and welcome to TYT Interviews. I'm Wes Clark Jr. and tonight I'm joined by Julissa Arce, who is an immigration advocate, and if we're to go deeper into it, she's an illegal immigration activist, correct?
Yeah, well, I think immigration, we try to bucket it too much into undocumented people and people who get to come here legally, but I really think that it needs to be looked at as a whole, because behind it is sort of what are our ideals about immigration, and I think they impact both documented people and people who are here undocumented.
Now, how do you, and let's get into your story first so people understand, like, where you're coming from on this. You were born and grew up the early part of your life in Mexico.
Yep.
And then you moved to the States with your parents when you were about 11?
Yes.
And you stayed on and they went home?
Yeah, so I came here when I was 11 on a tourist visa. And then when I was 18, getting ready to go to college, my parents decided to move back to Mexico so that I could use some money from my funnel exam to pay for college, because as an undocumented student, I didn't have access to any kind of financial resources to help for college. So that's when my parents went back to Mexico.
Where did you stay when your parents went back to Mexico? Because you were probably only, 14 or 15 at the time?
I was 18.
You were 18?
Yeah, I was 18. Okay. Yeah, so I was on my way to college, and so I moved from San Antonio, Texas to Austin, Texas, where I started at the University of Texas at Austin.
And you were undocumented at that point, and what was that like applying for college, and how did that affect you?
Yeah, it was really hard knowing that regardless of how well I did in school, I still might not be able to go to college because of the laws at that time. Mm-hmm. But I was very fortunate because in 2001, Texas, which blows my mind when I think about it now, but Texas, 15 years ago, became the first state in the U.S. to allow undocumented students to go to college, pay in-state tuition, and receive state financial aid. And so I graduated from high school in 2001, right around the time where this law passed, and that's what allowed me to go to college. But up until that point, my future was very uncertain, and that law gave me a little bit of hope, and at least it allowed me to take the very next step, which was to go to college.
Mm-hmm. And how did it affect your life at college?
Well, first of all, no one knew that I was undocumented, not even my closest friends, and so my college experience was very different, and it was very much dictated by my immigration status, right? Mm-hmm. So what might seem just like some college fun for some students, for me, it could have had really big consequences. I could have been deported if I got caught drinking underage, or if I got caught speeding, or any of those things. I really felt like I was very limited in the experiences that I could have in college, but nonetheless, I was very grateful that I could attend college and that I was getting an education.
Was it a fear? Was it a daily fear, like that you could be arrested for any kind of infraction when you went to school there?
Yeah, so my mom, when I was young, told me something that I've tried to live my life by, which is that there's a million things that we can't control, and why focus on those things, to focus on the things that we can't control. And so I made a really big effort to try and focus only on the things that I could control, which were how well I did in school, what activities I was involved with, and that's what I try to focus on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. But of course, there were very big reminders that I wasn't just like every other student, that my circumstances were very different and much more difficult. I couldn't study abroad. I couldn't apply at all, right? I couldn't go in spring break. So there were all these things that I couldn't do.
Planes?
I could, but it was a scary process, right? Because the only ID that I had was my Mexican passport. If anybody could looked at the visa part of it, presumably something bad could have happened. But it wasn't. I was very afraid and very lonely because my parents weren't in the U.S. My close friends knew really about me. I have an older sister that also stayed here. But besides her, we were kind of on our own here in the U.S.
Wow, and what did you study in college?
I was a finance major.
Finance major. And why did you choose finance?
So I had this really naive idea that if I could become financially successful, that maybe it wouldn't matter that I was undocumented. Maybe somehow I would be able to fix my immigration status, because doesn't money solve all problems in America? And so that was my goal going into college. I'm gonna study finance. I'm gonna go into business. I didn't yet at the time know which direction in business, but I knew that that's what I wanted to do, and I thought, as soon as I have some money, I'll be able to fix my immigration status. Who will want to turn me away if I have money in this country? Obviously, that's not how it works, but that's what I thought when I was 18.
But you are documented and legal now.
I am. Well, I've always been legal, because I don't believe that human beings can be illegal. Our actions certainly can be. So I've never thought of myself as someone who's illegal. But I was undocumented.
But there's a law on the books, and you're in violation of that law.
Right. So my actions were illegal, of course, because I was in the country illegally. But again, I don't think that me as a human being have ever been illegal. But I was undocumented. I didn't have documents. And now I'm an American citizen.
And how did that come about?
So it's a very long process, and I think it's worth talking about. I was married to a U.S. citizen, which is why I was able to adjust my immigration status. But it's not as easy as you just marry an American citizen and then immediately comes a green card and comes citizenship.
How does it work?
So for me, there were a couple of things that were key differences and key aspects that allowed me to become an American citizen. The first was that I never crossed the border illegally. Right? I came here on a tourist visa, and then the visa expired. And that makes a huge difference, all the difference. In fact, if I had crossed the border illegally, even if I married a U.S. citizen, and even if I had U.S. citizen-born children, I still would not be able to fix my immigration status under the current system.
So what would happen if that were the case?
I would still be undocumented, and I could still be deported, and I could still be separated from my family. So that's the reality of our immigration system in this country. But I didn't cross the border illegally, which to me doesn't really make a difference, because I was still in the country illegally, right? But so I married a U.S. citizen, and because I came on a tourist visa. And then the second thing is, we had a really good lawyer. So money did help me, right? Because we signed a $10,000 retainer and spent a lot more money than that on a lawyer that helped us to navigate a very difficult and nuanced and crazy immigration system. But if I didn't have those things, and not everybody has access to $10,000, right? A lot of people don't. Even people who are American citizens don't have access to $10,000. Right. So that made a really big difference in my case, and why I was able to ultimately adjust my status. I was a permanent resident for 5 years before I could apply for citizenship. And on August 8th of 2014, I became an American citizen.
Nice.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So, what happened after college? Because you've got a pretty incredible story, rags to riches story.
Yeah. So I graduated from the University of Texas at Austin in 2005. Hook'em Horns, we just had a big win against Notre Dame this weekend. And I went to work for Goldman Sachs. I had an internship during my junior year in college. And I know the big question, of course, is, well, how did I get that job if I didn't have any documents?
Yes. And
the very straightforward answer is that I used fake papers to get the job at Goldman Sachs. The more nuanced answer is that with my back against the wall, that was the only choice I really had. Right? I had sacrificed a lot to be here. My parents had sacrificed a lot for me to be here. And if I didn't use the fake documents to go work at Goldman, then I was sort of giving up on myself and giving up on my dream. And so, but even applying to Goldman with those papers, I didn't know if they were going to work. And I didn't know if I was going to be able to.
What papers were they?
So I had a fake green card and a fake Social Security card. And I had used those documents in the past to get jobs while I was in college, so that I could stay in college, so that I could pay for college. But I never imagined that I would ever use those documents to work at a place like Goldman Sachs. I had this hope, this very high hope that the DREAM Act, which was introduced in 2001, which would have given me and millions of young people like myself an opportunity to become permanent residents and eventually become citizens, that it would pass. It was introduced in 2001, and I thought by the time I graduated in 2005, this bill will have passed. Like, it made absolute sense to me that people who came here when they were young, at no fault of their own, who were in school, who had served in the armed forces perhaps, who were getting an education, should have some sort of path to citizenship. But that bill never passed, and it's 15 years later, and that bill still hasn't passed. So by the time I graduated,
it's brought up like every 2 years
right,
elections.
Right, and no one ever says anything about it. I mean, I would still be waiting. I knew I was waiting for the DREAM Act to pass. But I still didn't know whether those documents that I used were going to work or not. So it really, to me, was a miracle that they worked. That somehow I passed the background check.
A fake Social Security number work? Is it someone else's real number? Is it a made-up number? Is it someone who just passed away? Where does the number come from?
Yeah, so I guess it just depends who you get them from and where you get them. Mine happened to be like absolutely fake. It didn't belong to anyone. So the card still had my real name on it, and it was a completely fake, made-up number.
So Goldman got it, and they're just like, okay, there's a Social Security card, and there's no kind of system to verify that things are real or not real?
Yeah, so here's the thing, like a couple of things. One is, Goldman followed the protocol that they follow with every other employee, which is they ran me through a criminal background check, right? And I passed the criminal background check because I didn't have a criminal record, right? And it wasn't just Goldman, by the way. I also had to get background checks from the SEC and FINRA and all the different government organizations to get my trading license, right?
None
and all of them,
picked up
right?
That it was totally fake.
Right. So it wasn't like Goldman did something wrong in a sense, right? They did what they were supposed to do, which is to follow the protocol. The other thing is, so E-Verify, which is this huge database that employers will check a Social Security number against to make sure that it matches your identity. It did exist in 2001, but it wasn't broadly implemented in 2005. Sorry, it wasn't broadly implemented. It wasn't a requirement for every single employer at that time.
So if you had been 10 years younger, this couldn't have.
I wouldn't have been able to do it. That's right. I wouldn't have been able to. No. I mean, maybe somehow, but I think that the sort of the bigger theme here is how stereotypes, in a way, really helped me out, right? Because no one thinks that an undocumented person is applying for a job at Goldman Sachs. Because what we have in our minds of undocumented people are what the media posts on Fox News, right? These people crossing the border and working in our fields and taking care of our kids and cooking in our kitchens, which, by the way, they make our economy run, and those are incredibly important jobs, and they deserve the same amount of dignity as anybody else. But that is the only thing we think about undocumented immigrants. And so, who was going to question me? I graduated cum laude from the top 5 business school in the country. I had just interned at Goldman Sachs. I had other internships, and so no one was going to look at my documents and question them, right? It was sort of checking the box.
You were an important person already, so nobody can really.
I mean, I don't know that I considered myself an important person.
At 27, you were making $350,000 a year, and you were vice president at Goldman Sachs.
Yes, I was financially successful, sure, but yeah. So I think people wouldn't question my documents then, right? Because again, of the ideas, the preconceived notions we have about these issues, which tend to be very one-dimensional. We tend to give very simple answers to very complex issues, and sometimes, frankly, we just have the wrong answers for these issues. So, yeah, nobody was going to question me at that point.
And why didn't you stay at Goldman Sachs?
So, there's a few things that happened in my personal life that really shook me to the core. the biggest thing was that in 2007, my dad passed away, and he was living in Mexico at the time, and I didn't go see him. I never got to see my dad alive again because I was here and he was there, and there was the issue of crossing the border and coming back, right? How was I going to come back? And even if I did somehow successfully come back, it could have very bad consequences. As I was mentioning, if there was, even if I got married at some point later in the future, I wouldn't have been able to fix my status if someone found out that I crossed the border illegally. And sort of in that, there was a whole day where I was thinking, do I go back and see my dad, and if I do, I'm giving all this up, and if I don't, am I going to be able to live with myself, not ever see my dad alive again? And in the hours of agonizing over this decision, my dad passed away, and that was a really, it's something I'll have to live with for the rest of my life. But it really opened up my eyes to how much is this success really worth it, right? And how if I have all this financial success, but I can't even be with my father when he's dying. I can't even be with my family for my mom's birthday, or baptisms and quinceañeras and all of the things that are very important milestones in my culture. And so I think throughout for a couple of years I was questioning a lot of things, and when I got married and I had a green card, that gave me a lot of freedom. Having a green card gave me so much freedom to say, well, I don't have to stay in this job, right? I can leave this job. I can sort of think about what I want to do next, and eventually I went back to finance to work at Merrill Lynch for a couple of years. And it was after that I realized I have a really powerful story to tell. I have a story to tell that could really change the dialogue and give a very different perspective that people have around the issue of immigration. And that's when I really decided that I wanted to share my story and use my experience to give hope to other people who are walking in the shoes that I walked in, and to hopefully change the minds of people who think that the reason we come here is to take, when in reality the reason we come here is to give of our talents to this country.
And we'll get over to what you think we should do in terms of immigration, period. But what did you do at Goldman Sachs?
I structured derivatives. So this is really, it's sort of like the bad word in finance.
It is.
I structured derivatives. I didn't structure the credit derivatives or the mortgage derivatives. I structured equity derivatives for private wealth clients. So really wealthy clients, really wealthy individuals that needed some protection on their portfolio, or that wanted to invest in something that maybe was difficult to invest in directly. We would find a derivative way to help them
What would be
invest in
something
it.
that would be difficult to invest in directly?
Chinese stocks, for example, are very difficult to invest in directly, or Indian stocks are difficult to invest in. Currencies are difficult to invest in. So we would figure out ways to help clients invest in those markets without directly being invested in those markets. So that's what I did.
So you weren't involved in the credit default swaps, or?
No, not directly, right? But I think so it's sort of interesting in my trajectory. On one side, I had people who really don't like me because I was undocumented, and in their eyes, I'll always forever be a criminal. And then people on the other side who might say, here is someone who really put in the work, and see if she can do it, other people can do it. But wait a minute, she worked at Goldman Sachs, and that place is evil. And so
no, I mean, you're coming on. It's like if you were not an undocumented immigrant, we'd probably be crucifying you.
Exactly. And I've talked about Wall Street before, and that while yes, it is like very, very bad things happened within Wall Street, and there was a lot of greed. Wall Street also plays a really important role in our economy, right? And investment banks play a very important role in the growth of our economy.
And how does helping clients invest in Chinese and Indian stocks using derivatives help our economy?
Yeah, so I'm not suggesting that what I did directly, right? Although there could be, I could make the connection, but but big picture, if there are no investment banks, then how do people get mortgages? Right? If there are no investment banks, how does a company go public and create more jobs? Right? So there are, if there are no investment banks that manage retirement money, how do people save and invest for retirement? Right? So there are very important functions that banks play. Of course, it is the government's job to create laws and regulations that monitor what happens at those banks and at those institutions, but they do play an important role. And listen, I don't have a stake in this anymore, right? I don't work on Wall Street, but I do have a different perspective.
But the effects of it are global.
Yeah.
In how it operates. And I mean, the reality that I've seen is if you're a small cap company or you're small cap anything, the SEC rakes you over the coals. But if you're Goldman Sachs or Merrill Lynch or somebody else, let's be careful. These people donate to people and they can afford huge legal teams.
Yeah, I mean, the big banks definitely have more resources. Right? Just like big companies have more resources than smaller companies. So yeah, but I do think and strongly agree that there needs to be regulations to make sure that what happened in 2008 doesn't happen again. And I'm not saying that anybody should feel bad for anyone who has ever worked on Wall Street, but I saw my colleagues left and right getting laid off in 2008 as well. So people, thousands and thousands of people lost their jobs within the financial industry as well. So it wasn't something that was people who worked on Wall Street didn't go unscathed. And I think when we talk about people making millions and millions of dollars on Wall Street, the averages just work that way, right? Because there are people at the top, CEOs, who are making $20, $30, $40 million a year. And then there are people who, when you're a first-year analyst, when I was a first-year analyst working at Goldman Sachs, working 120 hours a week, I was making $55,000 a year. Right? So.
At 21?
It was 21, yeah. 22. Maybe 23. In my early 20s. Yeah, which is still a lot of money, but it's, you're living in New York City, $55,000 a year is really not.
It's a lot of money when you're 21.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting
I was an Army officer, and it was a 7-day-a-week job, and I got paid $30,000 a year.
Yeah.
So.
Listen, I don't make the rules.
No, I know you don't make the rules. But when we're on the subject, we got to get into all these things.
Yeah.
For instance, I was wondering, did anyone ever guilt trip you, or did you ever feel bad that maybe you took a legal immigrant's job at Wall Street?
All right, so we're going that route now.
No, it's not a route. These are genuine questions to ask.
Absolutely.
Because if you hadn't gotten the job,
somebody else would have. Yeah. So here's my answer to that. There are 17,000 people that apply for jobs at Goldman Sachs every year. They could have chosen anybody else to work there, but I was qualified to work there. I didn't get that job because I was a woman. I didn't get that job because I'm Hispanic and they were trying to meet some quota. I got that job because I am smart and I am qualified and I was good at my job. That's why I got that job. And they could have picked someone else, but they didn't. I earned that job. I earned that job by the grades I had in school, by the activities that I was involved with, by the amazing job that I did my summer internship. So, there were other interns who didn't get offers. Someone else could have gotten that job, but they didn't. So I don't feel at all like I stole that job from someone else. Did I earn them getting that job? Yeah, possibly, which is why I got that job and not someone else.
Should people from all over the world be able to compete for any job they want in the United States? Because China has more honor students than we have students.
Yeah.
So because they're qualified, should they take every job in America?
Yeah, I think the way to look at that is to say that if we have the best people doing the jobs in America, that will create more jobs in America for more people. And I do believe that when we talk about engineers and the fact that there aren't that there's all these jobs that are unfilled,
But a lot of those jobs are unfilled because they won't pay people the wage that they deserve, and instead companies want to pay them less, and so they hire foreign workers to work for less.
Yeah, I mean that happens. That especially happens in labor industries, right? I mean, that's why.
But specifically in IT.
Yeah.
Carriage Doctor is now up to date.
And that's where, again, these rules and regulations come in place, right? But I don't think that we should be faulting the people because, listen, an engineer that's coming from another country into America, would he rather make $80,000 or $50,000? Of course he wants to make 82, right? And if he's as qualified as someone else or he's more qualified, then he should get the job or she should get the job. And that's only going to make our country more competitive. I think.
How does it make our country more competitive to bring in people from another country and fire people in our own country?
No, I'm not saying we should fire people in our country and hire
cut
other
the wages
people.
of people in our own country.
I'm not suggesting that either. What I am suggesting is that if we have people who, the best people doing the jobs, then that will trickle down and it will create more jobs. And those jobs can be filled by American citizens. It can be filled by it will just create more jobs and more jobs and more economic activity. That is, from an economic standpoint, what happens when you have the best people doing the best jobs, right? You're interviewing me because you're the best person to be conducting this interview, but
no, not necessarily. I'm available, and I mean, I don't get paid, so I'm just
you should take that up with someone. Take that up with
there's not that much money to be left wing,
I believe that. I believe that if you have the best people, then that creates jobs. And I think that's a big argument to make for immigration reform because people think or believe that immigrants come and we suck everything out of this country. We suck the resources out of this country, and we all. There's a lot of people who do who believe that.
Definitely people that are voting for Donald Trump believe.
Well, yes, they absolutely believe that, I think when you, I don't think I know, when you look at the numbers, immigrants contribute more to the economy than what we might receive in benefits, which, by the way, as someone who was undocumented, we don't qualify for any of these things, right? Like, we need a Social Security number to get Social Security.
Yeah, the kids go to public school, don't they?
Yeah, they do. And immigrants pay taxes, right? My parents employed American citizens, in fact, in their small business. And they pay taxes, and we buy things, and we pay sales tax when we buy things. And we can actually buy homes using what's called an ITIN, an individual tax identification number, right? So we pay property taxes. So yes, and would we rather not educate those children and then have a whole generation of uneducated kids? No. Right? So I think at the end it's still a net benefit to our country and to our economy and to our society.
What do you think we should be doing immigration-wise in this country? How to fix the system?
Well, we're not going to fix the system by building a wall. We're not going to fix the system by banning an entire group of people from coming into the country. And we're not going to fix the system by demonizing Mexican immigrants. That's crystal clear to me. What we can do and what we should do is we need to look at the people who have been here for a long time, the 11 million undocumented immigrants, and create a path to citizenship. Because again, just from an economic standpoint, they will be able to contribute a lot more than what they do already. So we need to do that. This 10-year bans and this 3-year bans that were, by the way, implemented during the Clinton administration, those need to be looked at and revisited.
10-year bans and 3-year bans for the audience?
So if someone gets deported, if you get deported, you automatically get hit with a 10-year ban. Can't come back to the country.
Doesn't matter why you were deported.
Nope.
Makes no difference.
Nope.
Like
makes no difference.
Non-violent. No crimes committed at all.
Doesn't matter. 10 years. You're banned from coming back into the country. My mom is in that 10-year process. She wasn't even deported, actually. Her visa got revoked at the border by the Border Patrol because she was traveling with my brother, who's an American citizen, and so they thought she's going to come and stay here, and revoked her visa.
And how many years does she have till she can come back?
1 more year. And then there's no guarantee still, because there's still a process for her to come here. And this is where these are all the issues that I'm trying to point out. If you have a European Union passport, you can come to the U.S. as a tourist for 3 months. You don't have to get a visa. You don't have to get a permit. You just go to the airport with your European passport, and you can come be a tourist for 3 months. No one's going to ask you about how much money you make, how much money's in your bank account, if you own a home or not. None of that. If you are a tourist from Mexico and you want to come visit your daughter, or you want to see your son graduate from college next year, you have to show that you have property, that you have money, that you have assets, that you have investments. You pretty much have to be wealthy when you come
because
be
they
a
want
tourist
to
from a
know
country
you're
like
going to go
Mexico.
home.
Right. But why don't we do that for everyone else? There are people who struggle who want to come here from every part of the world.
That's true.
So those things need to be looked at. And the way in which people are able to come here needs to be looked at. I think it's a real waste of talent when we have students that come here and they spend their educational years in our country, and then as soon as they graduate from college, we kick them out. There should be a way for them to stay and to get jobs and to contribute to the economy, because we've educated them, so why not now take advantage of their talents? So those are the things and the issues I think we need to look at when we talk about reforming our immigration system.
Well, when we talk about documentation and how do people get in, I mean, I think Pew said that poll results, 60% of Mexicans would immigrate to the U.S. tomorrow if they could, and I think 80% of Salvadorans.
Where was that poll from?
It was in Pew poll like about a year ago.
I didn't see that poll.
So, and we've already got tens of thousands of people crossing per month. Should we let everybody in?
So, by the way, border crossings are at the lowest level they have been since the 1970s.
Really?
Yes. And net migration from Mexico is actually zero. So there are as many people leaving
another 5 years we're going to
as they are
Mexicans to come here, because the Mexican economy has taken off since China's wages have gone up in the last 3 or 4 years. The whole maquiladora ban in northern Mexico is like booming.
Yeah.
And when in about 10 years, they're going to be begging Mexicans to come here.
And by the way, I don't know if you knew this, but there are actually a lot of call centers in Mexico now, because all the people we're deporting who speak perfect English, who are culturally American, and they're employing them. So all of these people who've been deported are now getting jobs in Mexico in these call centers at much higher wages than other jobs that they could find in Mexico. And it's really unfortunate for them, because when they were here, we told them they were taking our jobs, and then we deport them. Some of them have lived in the U.S. for 30 years, and they don't really speak Spanish. They don't they're not culturally Mexican. They don't identify with the culture because they haven't lived there for 30 years. And now Mexicans tell them they're taking their jobs. So it's a real...
Well, Mexicans are upset that they're...
Absolutely, yeah, because they think, that should be our job.
Yeah.
So I feel a lot for the people who have been deported, and I don't think that we pay enough attention to that. Even us in the immigration rights movement, it's sort of like when someone gets deported, we of course try to stop the deportations, and there are amazing organizations who do everything in their power and do the humanly impossible to stop deportations. And there are also some really great organizations in Mexico that I know of specifically that try to help people who've been deported, but they're not part of the organization.
Right.
I do.
And what's your organization called?
I run an organization called the Ascend Educational Fund, and we provide college scholarships and mentorship to immigrant students regardless of their immigration status. So some of our students are first-generation Americans. They have two parents who were born outside of the U.S., but they were born here. And then the majority of our students are students who are undocumented. We simply just don't ask for their immigration status. And we started 4 years ago, and in the last 4 years, we've given out $200,000 in college scholarships to the students. It's all privately raised money.
And then do you track them after college to,
we do.
To help with job placement and everything else, and mentorships for other students?
Yeah, so all of our students are still enrolled in college, which is unheard of, right? So we have none of our students have dropped out, and a lot of them are first-generation college students. We're very proud of that, and this year we will have our first students graduating from college. So yeah, we're really proud of that.
Now let's have some hypotheticals here. You know economics.
Yeah.
What's going to happen to the United States if Trump is elected president and he does what he said he's going to do? I think I'll tell you what I think is going to happen, but let's say what happens if he were elected on day one. What would happen if he actually tried to round up and deport 11 million people?
Well, okay, so this is a really big hypothetical, because even if, I can't even say it, because I can't even physically get out of my mouth, even if you are someone who is a Trump supporter, this is a very big hypothetical, because when he says that in his first hour in office, they're going to be gone, like, first of all, in your first hour in office, nothing is going to happen. Like, literally, you're going to do nothing. You're not going to be able to deport 11 million people. First of all, the economic cost of hiring and creating a whole deportation force, and then you're going out into the streets, trying to find these people, trying to round them up. You're not just gonna, are you just gonna put them on a plane and ship, like, are you gonna put them in a truck? Are you gonna put them in these awful, god-awful detention centers? Like, there aren't even
to their
enough.
property?
What happens to their kids who are American citizens? Okay. What happens to the jobs that they fill?
What happens to the wealthy people's tenements that they're renting out to all these people?
I mean, there is a huge economic impact of taking out. Forget whether they're documented or not. If all of a sudden your population shrinks by 11 million people
who are all working,
you're going to have a problem.
Yeah,
a huge economic problem. The impact is going to be felt across the country if something like that were to happen. It's not going to happen even if he is elected president, because it's logistically impossible to do what he is suggesting that we do. And where is he going to get the money? I know he says and thinks in his redhead head that Mexico is going to pay for the wall. That's not going to happen. You can't make another sovereign nation pay for your crap. You just can't. Like, he can't do that. I know he says he's going to implement trading tariffs on Mexican goods. But by the way, we export so many things into Mexico. California, South Dakota, some of their biggest importers of where they export their goods to is Mexico. So Mexico could retaliate and do the same thing to those economies. So there are states in this country that would be greatly affected by those kinds of policies.
I would think we'd all pay a fortune on food to the point that it's unsustainable. And I'm not just saying eliminating immigrants from fields. I mean, day one, if America, think about electing a guy who says, I'm not going to pay my debt.
Right.
There goes your interest rates.
Right.
There goes the value of the dollar.
Right.
People they don't think about this stuff.
Right. There are very, we actually have to follow through to all the very insane things that he is suggesting would happen. I was watching this interview with the founder of Latinos for Trump, and he says that our culture is very strong, and there's going to be taco trucks everywhere. I'm like, I
gotta tell you,
I don't know any Americans who are.
They're not like Mexicans have adapted faster probably than any previous ethnic group we've ever had in terms of speed with which they've taken in, like, the English language to names of their children to everything else. I mean, it's like, it makes the Italians and the Germans look like a bunch of stubborn, cultural ideologues that didn't want to change.
I think that's a big thing, right? When we say that people need to assimilate need to assimilate, like, what do we need to assimilate to? Because American culture, what is American culture? Right? Like, for me, American culture has a heavy Latino influence because I am Latino, right? For someone who's Asian American, their American culture is heavily influenced by their Asian parents and their Asian relatives, right? So at the end of the day, really, when we're saying you need to assimilate, we're saying you need to be more white. That's what we're telling people.
I don't know. I think it's more. I don't think
because
it's that
otherwise, like if we all need to assimilate, then we all need to assimilate to all the cultures that make up the American
I think to a large extent we do, both in diet and adopting words from other languages and everything else. I mean,
so I'm assimilated.
Everybody's assimilated.
Exactly.
Lives here after a year because they're Americans.
Yeah.
Listen, we're almost out of time. You've got a book that you wrote.
Yes.
Let's get that book up there.
My Underground American Dream. It will be in store September 13th, but you can pre-order it now. And really the focus of the book is what is the cost of the American dream? And I think for anybody who's ever felt like the other and an outsider, they will be able to relate to a lot of the experiences that I've had growing up in this country as an undocumented woman, as a Hispanic woman who climbed up the corporate ladder in a very male-dominated world. And I hope people will enjoy reading it. I'm very proud of it. And if you're in New York, September 13th, come out to the Strand Bookstore.
You got it. Well, thank you for joining.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.